Again, welcome. So, just for some quick housekeeping things here on our latest episode of At Home with Holland Home. As always, we're going to have an opportunity for questions at the end. So if you have those, please type those into the Q&A box, not the chat, Q&A box. That way both Curt and I can see them. And if it's a Dementia Institute question, Curt would be delighted to answer those, and I'll do my best to answer any Holland Home questions that you have. We do have some other events coming up. Just kind of give you a little tease about those. In September 17th, we'll have another open house at our Breton Terrace building, kind of showing off the gorgeous remodeling work that's happened down there. A big investment back in that building that's just stunning. And so we look forward to that on September 17th. You'll be getting an email about that. And then also in late October or November, we're going to have another one of our resident panel events. Those are been wildly popular, where people hear from others that have moved into Holland Home and hear about the experience. And then finally, later in the fourth quarter of this year, we'll have another webinar in our series talking about the importance of planning. So with all that housekeeping work done, again, we're welcome to this installment of At Home with Holland Home. We're going to talk about the Dementia Institute. And so we're happy to welcome Curt Gritters, who's the director of the Dementia Institute. He has his MBA, and he's also a nurse, so he's very qualified to talk about some of these things. And he, I know, is the director, but he also has a great team of people that it takes definitely a village, as the African proverb says. So I'm sure he'll be talking about that a little bit. So Curt, welcome. Glad to have you on this installment. So can you just give us a little bit of the lay of the land about dementia and what are the trends and what's happening in that area?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael. What a pleasure to be here with you. Dementia is kind of defined as a persistent loss of brain function that interferes with everyday life. So most of us kind of recognize some of the symptoms like memory loss, but it might also include communication challenges or difficulties with everyday tasks that might be somewhat routine normally for us, but are a challenge with dementia, or struggles making decisions too. So dementia is quite common. 1 in 9 older adults has dementia. And even 1 in 3 of us may have dementia by the time our life here on this earth is finished. So with perhaps 50,000 people living with dementia right here in West Michigan, there's a pretty good chance that everybody on this webinar knows somebody living with dementia, even if they don't realize it.
Yeah, that's a huge number, 50,000 people in West Michigan. That's astonishing and sobering at the same time. So definitely there's a need out there for some education. And I know I get a question a lot, and it's hard for me to always keep it in my brain to remember the difference between how is dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, those seems like they're terms we hear interchangeably, but can you tell us a little bit about the difference between those two?
And when I say it, Michael, you're going to remember. So you don't have dementia right here.
Okay, good. That's a good sign.
So
some days
dementia is really an umbrella term. All right. In fact, I'd like to maybe challenge our audience here to guess how many different types of dementia there are. You've all heard of Alzheimer's, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but any guesses? Think about them. You can dump them in the chat if you want, but how many different types of dementia do you think there are? There's actually
I think you stumped people. I don't see any answers in the chat.
Well, they've given it a little bit of thought here.
Yeah.
There's actually over 120 different types of dementia. Now, everybody's heard of Alzheimer's. That's by and far the most common cause and type of dementia, 60 to say 80% of cases. But you may have also heard about other types of dementia like vascular dementia or Lewy body dementia or frontotemporal. In fact, it's becoming more understood nowadays as the science develops that mixed dementia or multiple causes may be how people experience dementia. So Again, just as a quick recap, dementia is really the umbrella term. Alzheimer's is one of the most popular common types of.
Okay. So all Alzheimer's patients have dementia, but not all dementia patients have Alzheimer's.
Perfect. Well said.
Okay, great. So knowing that there's this huge need and the like, how did the Dementia Institute get started?
Yeah, Michael, it was started last year by a team of Holland home dementia experts who had two main goals. The first one was to put even more momentum behind Holland Home's excellence in memory care services, uh, additional training for staff, and additional services for residents at Holland Home. And the second one was to take all that experience from decades of doing this well, and also make them available to the community with an array of new resources too. So now, as you introduce, the Dementia Institute is a team. It has a geriatrics fellowship trained physician, 4 nurses full time, among whom there are, I think, 9 or 10 different dementia certifications. So highly qualified folks who surround me and provide a really good service to Holland Home and the community, and with a goal of improving dementia well-being across West Michigan and beyond.
That's wonderful. So tell us a little bit, Curt, about some of the services that the Dementia Institute offers.
Sure. I'll list a few and we can maybe dig into some of them if you please or have time. But resources that are open to both the Holland Home residents and the broader community include a Dementia Journey simulation, a family and friends series of classes, one-on-one consultations, worship support groups, respite, quite an array of services.
Wow. Well, I like that idea. Let's delve into some of them and specifically. And the first one you mentioned was the Dementia Journey, and it's something I've done personally. So can you tell our viewers what that's like, that Dementia Journey?
Yeah, the way I think of it is it's an opportunity to almost literally and figuratively walk in the shoes of somebody living with dementia. So our team uses various implements to alter the senses of participants and then have them perform various tasks. And as you can imagine, that might be somewhat disorienting or frustrating. So when you experience that together, and then when we debrief afterward, to kind of share some of the experiences and what we've learned, is quite a meaningful opportunity that really, perhaps for you, it certainly did for me, and we hear that from other participants too, invokes empathy. Wow, I didn't realize, my husband, my spouse, my grandparent was experiencing that. Pretty profound. In fact, so much so that Holland Home, I understand, even requires the Dementia Journey of all of its staff. Is pretty powerful. So now making that available to the public too has been quite an opportunity.
Yeah, as someone that's gone through that dementia journey and that has family members that are, living with dementia, it's both it was both a frustrating experience, especially as someone that's a little OCD and organized and trying to do some of those tasks that normally would just find very easy to do and struggled to do it. I found it frustrating. I found it emotional. And so it was really, like you said, literally you were in the shoes of those that are kind of going through that. What I also appreciated was that it didn't stop. It didn't end with that. Like it didn't say, well, that's how it is. But someone on your team, Rosemary, was so helpful in, and maybe you talk about this a little bit, but like some of the coaching of just how to interact with someone with dementia. So understanding what they're going through, and we experienced it as a participant for just a few minutes and how impactful it was. But then Rosemary and the team were offering suggestions and trainings about how to help us interact with people that have dementia.
Yeah, perhaps it's an appetizer of that after the dementia journey, and one of the courses of the meal, so to speak, could be the family and friends series, where through a series of three different classes, participants there can really dig in more to what dementia is, how to communicate with your loved one who has dementia, learning validation, which is tough. It's not really natural for us to validate something that seems wrong to us. But then also how to apply those skills at various stages of dementia. So there's classes that can support that. We do one-on-one consultations too, and those may be opportunities to dig into the nuance of particular questions that you might have and how to apply those. Some that we get, for example, are how to navigate even family dynamics. My sister and I are arguing over whether or how or when to take away dad's keys, or what does an advanced care plan look like? When do I need one? Whom do I go to? Where's my support? Or even just wow, Michael, this is so overwhelming. I just don't even know where to go next. What resources might be out there to help?
Sure. I know when we've talked in the past, you've talked about the Evening Star. Can you talk a little bit about that as part of the Dementia Institute, and then maybe some of those support groups that are available?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's probably one of my favorite parts, actually. So let me put it this way. If I have dementia, I might forget my wife's name. I might forget where I'm at right now. I might think that it's 1982, but I can still recite by memory, despite having even a late stage of dementia, Psalm 23. Or I might be able to belt out that chorus on how great thou art. So it's pretty cool, because the way that dementia works, you still have retained the rhythm and poetry, which are often part of worship. So the Evening Star Worship Handbook and Evening Star Ministry are really ways to empower an in-the-home caregiver, family caregiver, to lead and worship their loved one who, a dear friend and mentor of mine kind of worded it this way. It might seem to us like our loved one is fading, but they're still a really bright gem in Christ's crown. And I think Evening Star does a fantastic job in allowing that to continue. Worship is still an important part and place in our life.
That's wonderful. Yeah, isn't it amazing that despite all those things that they may forget, that there's something about that, the music or something spiritual that still is in there. It's really impactful. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of the support groups or the personal consultations that are available through the Dementia Institute.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about support groups there too.
No, that's fine.
I think support groups come out of our empathy for the community too, because we realize that caregiving is really tough work. So for all of you caregivers out there, we salute you. It can be exhausting. So support groups are really a great opportunity, Michael, for asking questions of others who have walked that path before you, getting tips, but sharing tips too. And even in some ways finding validation, or even finding a confidant, or establishing a friendship because you feel exhausted and sometimes alone. So we offer various support groups. Most of them meet monthly. And again, there's some of them that are open to the public, some specifically for people living at Holland Home. Those are free, and we'd love to have you join us. Mentioned a little bit about consultations too. Those can be ways to come with maybe more of the challenging, nuanced, perhaps even private, difficult challenges that you face. There's kind of a preparation thought starter guide on our website that our listeners may find helpful if they would be interested in a consult.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit too about Dementia's Institute working with Care Resources on a dementia day center? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and maybe similar to support groups, that comes out of our empathy for recognizing how challenging caregiving is. it can be really tough. And we find so many of our friends, our family, the people that we serve have been doing this for years, and they are burned out, and they've stopped going to coffee with their friends. They've stopped that evening Bible study that was really important to them. They've perhaps stopped, even having kids over because they don't know how to handle it, or it's too stressful for dad. So this opportunity with Care Resources, our colleagues and good friends over there, we teamed up with them to create a dementia specialized day center. So that's based right here in West Michigan. And the team there has become so adept at engaging and really working well and wisely with people living with dementia. So it's an opportunity for caregivers perhaps to bring their loved one there for a half a day or a full day. And many of them do once or twice a week, just to be able to get away with friends. Don't use that time to get groceries, all the boring stuff. Maybe you need to, but take time to recoup. You've been on airplanes before, and you hear the airline say, "Hey, when if these oxygen masks would drop down from the ceiling, put yours on first." Now, on the surface, that might kind of seem selfish, but it really is pretty practical, right? The reason being, if you're not breathing, there's no way that you can help the kiddo sit next to you. Kind of the same thing here with respite. If you're not taking care of yourself, and as a caregiver, you're really burned out, you're not really in a good spot to be able to provide that care for your loved one and be able to allow them to stay living in your home, or to continue to find joy in that relationship with them. So I think respite support groups, these types of services are pretty important for caregivers.
Sure. And it's really good for the caregivers, but it's also wonderful for the person that's participating in it, the person that has dementia. It was you or someone on your team was talking about how just like a very small interaction can have like a long-term impact. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's quite something. I learned that too from the dementia specialists on my team, who are amazing. They taught me that a mere 1 minute engaging interaction, the feel good effects from that can last 5+ hours. So having important, even short, meaningful, engaging interactions with your loved one with dementia, or your friend or neighbor whom you might stop by to visit, can have quite a lasting impact.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you're really able to help people regardless if they're at Holland Home or they're in their own home. This isn't just something for Holland Home residents. That's great.
Correct. Yeah, we're here to serve them, Michael. Of course, we care about them and the Dementia Institute growing out of Holland Home. That is family to us. But yeah, these resources are available to all of West Michigan and beyond.
That's great. Is there anything else you want to add before we kind of open this up to questions from our participants?
Sure. The Dementia Institute really is eager to serve. There's a lot of momentum behind this, and when we see the community find interest or find relief or have those aha moments, that inspires us to do more for all of you too. So do come and visit us if you can. Michael will have on the screen during the Q&A our website and our phone number, our email. Drop us a line, tell us how we can help. We'd be pleased to work with you.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we'll have this up on the screen about how they can learn more. So anything else to add before we open it up here to questions?
I don't think so. Maybe one other just kind of sidebar. We do find that so many people like to or have a goal of aging in place. And I know that's something Holland Home supports and believes in. The Dementia Institute does too. So that is one of our goals too. If we can support you, help you age in place, we're here for that and have a number of supports for that. If or when you do need other resources, there are specialized training that the Dementia Institute has helped with various organizations around West Michigan too, so that if or when you need some of those services, they're prepared to walk alongside you, walk with you, support you in that journey too, regardless of what stage of dementia you're at.
Yeah, that's great. Dementia Institute helps them in our home or theirs, whichever one. We'll meet them where they are. So that's great. Let's open it up here to any questions that people might have had. I'm going to share the screen here.
Perhaps I can ask a question of our listeners too, Michael. What are some of the challenges that you face? Where do you feel like there are unmet needs in our community? What are some of the struggles that either you personally have experienced or that you've heard of before, and would hope that there could be services available in West Michigan to serve?
Maybe while we're waiting on those questions, maybe or those, some of the things people are facing, maybe go into a little bit more detail about the caregiving course, since I think that's something that's so critical, because I think a lot of people they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know how to do the right thing, right? When it's had to deal with people that they love with dementia. So maybe talk a little bit about those caregiving course and what's involved in that while we wait for some other questions.
Yeah, sounds good. So right now it's a 3-part course, and we typically offer that series once each month. So somebody can get through the entire 3-part series in each month. We're hoping soon to be able to offer all of it in like a half day or 6-hour course or something to get it all finished at once, and also have a virtual option. But basically what participants experience in that course is starting off with a brief time of learning about the brain. Dementia really is brain change. So even though it has some stigma to it, there ought not be, because it's no different than my heart changing and having, atherosclerosis and needing a stent placed, or my bones changing and having osteoporosis. Dementia is brain change. So a short time there talking about the kind of biological anatomical roots of that, chemical roots of it, but then quickly moving on though to how to communicate with someone living with dementia. And there is quite an art form associated with that. And what I find amazing about this course, in the way that Rosemary and Melanie and Lois teach it, is there's quite an opportunity to do role play and practice. So it's not just you listen, you intake some of this information. There are YouTube videos all over online too that anybody can listen to, but experiencing this in person and practicing this has quite a profound impact and changes the way people behave. In fact, we found that even when we were doing training for some of our staff who have perhaps been working with those living with dementia for 20 some years, there's this aha moment of, whoa, I wish I knew this, a couple decades ago. It's quite profound.
Yeah.
And
I think it's probably like a lot of things, right? The more time evolves, we learn more, right? And we become better at it, just with the research and experience. So
absolutely.
Do have a couple of questions that have popped into the Q&A. Again, if you have those, just type them out there. What types of training do caregivers need to help them better learn how to best connect?
I like that question.
Training do caregivers need?
Sure. I think there can be various types of training, and perhaps Lynn can explain a little bit more of what she means by types of, but I think I'll address it from a couple angles. One is the type of content. And I think the way the Dementia Institute has this outlined of the roots in brain change, but then how to communicate, the skills that you can use, and tips and tricks for working with a loved one who has dementia. And then also how those can be adapted in each stage of dementia, from mild cognitive impairment on the front end through pretty late stage severe dementia. But then there's also different ways that we learn. So again, sometimes we can learn just by listening to some content, but I think the experiential learning of living it and practicing it is quite profound too.
Yeah, that's great. And she mentioned that did answer her question, based
Okay.
on the brain change. So we also had a question: how are you funded, and how do you charge for your services?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Norman. The way that we're funded right now is Holland Home invested quite a bit to get us started, believing that this is a really important cause for our community. Beyond that, there are modest fees that we have to charge for some of our services. We believe they are based on the value that customers receive, not on the expense that it costs us to be able to stand that up. And then also we're funded through grants and philanthropy. So we write for grants from local through the federal level, and then also depend quite heavily on people from the community who believe in our cause, and would like to support that through gifts. So there are some charges for some services, other ones are free.
Yeah. And your website is pretty dynamic with having a lot of that information on it. So that's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions at all from our audience? If you do have questions after this webinar, you have the email address there. You have the web address for their website and the phone number. So I know they'd be delighted to hear from people. As someone that has interacted with some of the Dementia Institute's services, like I mentioned before, the Dementia Journey, I couldn't recommend it enough. We are seeing people come to us from a Holland Home perspective, of where people have been maybe dealing with parents that are going through some of these things, and then have decided to be proactive for their own care, and maybe start that journey, or that at least those conversations earlier about what does the future look like as far as access to care and those kind of things. So we see that happen quite a bit. We're seeing it more. Both us and others in the industry are seeing a lot of people starting those conversations a lot earlier than they used to, recognizing that this is just going to become more and more of an issue. Like Curt said, we already have 50,000 people here in West Michigan with that. So,
and did you know, Michael, that dementia is typically an 8 to 20 year journey? So on the front end of it, we might not recognize it, or we might not have a diagnosis of dementia, but knowing that some of these services are here and available now may be helpful for some folks. They enjoy learning about it now, and then perhaps as dementia progresses, additional services may be required or be helpful. But yeah, it's quite a journey. We have our utmost empathy for those who experience that. And again, a huge tribute and admiration for you caregivers, both in the healthcare setting who do this professionally, but also for the informal and family caregivers. You guys do amazing work, and we want to be here and have our services be a tribute to you. We care about you. We have empathy for what you're experiencing, and if there's ways that we can support you, we absolutely want to.
yeah, that's great. I have had a couple more questions come in. When you talk about these trainings, who typically attends those trainings, and can they share their personal experience and maybe get some advice on how to handle things?
Sure. We do have classes and courses actually that lead to certifications and accreditations for healthcare professionals. So typically a healthcare professional caregiver would be in one type of course. And then this family and friends course that you and I have been talking about is typically for anybody from the community. And we've had, spouses come, children come. We've had people from other states contacting us about, oh, my sibling in West Michigan went to this class and helped me understand a little bit more. So a team of kids maybe better prepared to serve dad or mom. But then we've also had, the younger kids too. Children as young as 8 to 10 may enjoy experiencing the dementia journey to understand more what grandpa or great grandma are experiencing. But yeah, those courses I would say are for anybody from the community. They can ask any question they feel comfortable asking in a group setting in the Q&A sessions of those courses. And we'd be happy to address that. If there are things that are more private, you can do so by email. But we find that quite a few people enjoy the one-on-one consultation, and they can take family and friends to that consultation as well. But by one-on-one, we mean that it's private for just you. So that may be a good forum for you too.
Yeah. Couple more questions came in. We need guidelines when to have a loved one discontinue driving a car. That's a tough conversation.
That is. In fact, we're working on a blog right now on that. It is probably beyond the scope of this webinar here too. But think about safety. Safety is probably the primary concern when your loved one might miss a construction zone or might get lost coming home from the grocery store. Those can be quite disconcerting for family and are often a catalyst for having some of that conversation. How to have that conversation, though, can be very, very challenging. And we should talk through sometime what that conversation can sound like. But yeah, that can be a tough one.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to that blog on your website.
All right.
That's a great tease for that and promotion. So one other question, and I don't know if this is something we want to get into here, or what determines if a person can have external care and when they should be admitted to the memory care unit?
That's an interesting question. It's probably different for every person who's listening here. External care also can take several different forms, by the way, so I should give a quick intro to that. If somebody's living in their own home that they grew up in, let's say with a spouse who has dementia, they may desire to live there for the rest of their life, and that's fantastic. The Dementia Institute can support them with some of the resources that we've already discussed, but one of the next steps beyond kind of a day center respite type of thing may be to have an atrial home care come in and provide some services. Could even be once or twice a week, and then that could grow. But and then after that too, I mean, if they make a decision to get involved in a nursing home or memory care unit, is everybody's unique decision based largely on factors that are important to you. When you're exhausted or burned out and maybe don't feel like you can anymore, but there's a whole continuum of services that allow you to stay in the place that you want to be in for as long as you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Is that a fair answer, do you think?
I think so. And
really
I think there's not a one size fits all, right? It could be a variety of things that impact that. The caregiver's energy and ability. Is someone an elopement risk, right? That they're going to, they start to wander or that kind of thing. Could have a big impact on whether where staying home is safe. So I think there's a lot of things that play into that decision. Having some of those conversations. So
Yeah, another quick comment, if I may, Michael, is something that children or caregivers often think is most important is safety. And it really is. Elopement or fall risk or driving it is very important for the safety of the person living with dementia, but especially with driving may be a risk for other people around them as well. But something else to consider is relationships. And it's important to continue to have that relationship with your loved one. The Dementia Institute can come alongside you and support you in that, help you learn tips and tricks for maintaining a healthy, good, communicative relationship that both of you find joy in. So that in the engagement with the person living with dementia is a pretty important factor too. What brings them quality of life is more than, I think, just a safety question. But
Well, and that's why, like you said, Dementia Institute, the team there can help with some of those conversations. One of the people here on in our Q&A that added, Lynn added about maybe bringing in somebody like a physician to have a conversation about driving. In other words, let somebody else kind of be the heavy if you need that. And so it's not always about the family being, the bearer of bad news. So
lean on others. In fact, some states I was studying actually have kind of driving review boards that have physicians and specialized occupational therapists on them. Mary Freebed locally does some of that work too, to help you make that determination.
yeah. What are you seeing, Curt, as far as with the Dementia Institute and people that you're working with? Maybe it's the caregiver and their families, and you've talked about this day center with care resources. How critical is that socialization for somebody with dementia? Because I think that's a question we get, regularly.
Let me take a spiritual slant on this. Many Christians believe that God created people in his image and as rational, moral, relational beings. So the essence of who we are is built, is designed to have relationship with God and with others. So relationships are really important. As I progress in my dementia, and the way that I communicate doesn't make sense to you anymore, or even when I stop communicating, it may be tempting for my grandkids to stop visiting because they don't know how to interact with me. But that relationship, that image of Godness is still there. It's still super important to have an engaging relationship with God and with your loved ones, your friends, your neighbors. So I'd love to emphasize how important relationships continue to be, even though to all of you who see me as not communicative or not making any sense and you have no idea how to interact with me, still very important to serve them with relationships.
Yeah,
It's tough.
yeah, it is. One of our persons put in the Q&A, she said, "Amen, Curt." So I think it does go back to what you said earlier about that 1 minute of interaction, of a meaningful interaction can have 5 hours of benefit. So I think that really speaks to how important it is, even when it's hard for the caregiver to have socialization. So anyway, I'm not seeing any other questions. If I do, while we wrap things up, we'll certainly throw them in here at the end. But Curt, thanks for taking the time to help educate us on the Dementia Institute and what you and the team are doing there. It's a pretty interesting initiative, I think, and really speaks to the culture here at Holland Home. We're creating something that doesn't just serve Holland Home residents, but it's for the community at large, because we view that as an important part of our role as a community asset here in West Michigan. So
It's a blessing to
information's
serve.
on, sorry?
It's a blessing to serve.
Yes, for sure. Everything, the contact information's there on the website, phone number and email. If you have questions, do reach out to them. Take a look at their website. As I mentioned before, we got some events coming up, open house, resident panel. Look for your emails on those things. We do have some availability here in 1-bedroom apartments and one Breton Homes North home left. So if you're thinking of a move before the snow flies, I know it's going to be 90 this weekend, but you know, snow will fly soon. So if you're thinking about a move before that, love to talk to you. But until next time, this has been At Home with Holland Home, and I hope you have a really awesome day. Thanks for joining.